Well, good evening again, business people. And you can see at the schedule that I have here in Connect that I've moved the assignment for Chapter 3 to next Monday rather than this Thursday. I'll also put in an assignment for Chapter 4 since we've caught up on all our chapter reading on this with our Learn Smart. Okay, so there'll also be a Chapter 4 after I discussed with some students at the end of class tonight. It seems like if I just make two assignments on one night, everybody can manage their time a little bit better. Now, the one part about chapter 3, the base case analysis, that we didn't finish here, I just want to build this up for the NPV. This is something that I think there's not really a short and sweet video out there that I can use that someone else has done. So I want to give you exactly, there's a couple issues here I want to talk about. So the discount rate we talk about can be assigned to an origin or a reason of interest. Okay, it could be something that you're borrowing against to get your project done. It could be the rate of inflation, or it could be some known return on another opportunity that you're measuring against. You're trying to see whether the irregular cash flows that you have on this project can beat another project, where to invest, considering or not considering switching costs on that. Okay. So what we'll do is put together just a quick framework here that matches what we went over in class. It'll look like your homeworks here is you're going to end up doing a year by year analysis, which is usually done either by quarters or you're going to do it by half years. I've seen one of the problems in there is done by half years just to make you think a little bit. And remember that you're taking the simple annual rate of your discount rate there, and you're applying that over whatever terms per year that it is. Your annual rate for the example I'll give here will be 10%. And you just have to check to see what your problem is it whether it's monthly, quarterly, or by half year. Okay. So as we talked about in class, there's a number of time sequence events that happen that take some investment expenditures. We talked about expenditures being either expense or it could be converted into an asset. Expenditures is just any outflow of money, and expense is used toward the business, something you can claim against at the end of the year, what it took. Or you might be investing in something like a patent, or you might be investing in a piece of machinery. It all depends. Those can be capitalized. Okay, so you either have expenses or you have capitalized expenditures. All right. So it's somewhat of a reverse of what a normal P&L statement will be. In these projects, we're showing all the expenditures first, and then we're going to show sales because sales ends up being down the list in time of when they will occur after the beginning of the project. So what I'll do is apply a little minimal formatting here. I always like to be easy on my eyes, and for anybody else that is going to be using this after me, darken that up. I usually use a dark blue on that, and then I also convert the text to white, and you have to make it pop a little bit by bolding it up. If you hit bold on there, then it thickens the lines up. You tend to lose it something when you don't bold it up. So this will look something like the framework that you're going to use for the homeworks, and I'm going to make a deposit point on eClass to upload your Excel files. Okay, so what we're going to do is just net it out. I'm going to show that the net is basically your sales minus all expenditures for the period. Okay, so I'm going to make up some numbers here that hopefully will work out in the end. Let's see how this works. Let's say that first quarter we put out $5 million. Same for the second quarter. We'll fill out the rest of this in basically an arbitrary way. Expenses are going up a little bit by the end of the year. Year two, we might get into some pre-production there. We have to get equipment, train people, hire people. Expenses go up more and more. But then our sales kick in. Okay, so we had to do some marketing there in year two. That costs some money. And so by year three, let's say that we start going net positive. Our sales are great. We're selling everything we make. That's generally how these problems go. So let's do some kind of ramp up on net our net margin here. What are we netting out in absolute terms in millions of dollars there? And let's do a sum on that. We'll do an alt equal at the end of the line here, and it worked for us. Doesn't always work. Sometimes Excel doesn't exactly figure it out for us. But if you look, we made $4 million on 4 years worth of work. All we made netted out $4 million, and that's not considering our discount rate yet. So, as usual with these types of Excel sheets, we're going to put in a total over here. The writing, we just had to click over to make it dark. It had been white, so you couldn't see it there, right? So putting in our double line usually indicates some kind of serious summation is happening at that point, summing things out, we're netting things out. And $4 million, let's give ourselves a little bit of headroom here, okay? I'd like to show that we're making a little bit more after 4 years than $4 million on what, probably $50 million, $60 million that we put into this thing. That's not much of a payback. All right, so I shifted the numbers around a little bit, and at least we got up to a net of 12. The net of 12 for the year, that is. And so let's make an assumption that we're going to have a 10% annual, simple annual rate, annual discount rate here. Okay. And let's convert that over to percentage. I've got to type back in there, make it 10%, not 1,000%. Okay. And so now when we build it this way, our formula will ride around that as a constant. Now we can write our formulas in a way such that we can change that discount rate on the fly and it will recalculate. Okay, so the point now is we have to take a look at these payments that are coming in the future, and they're going to be worth in today's dollars less than their face value that you see there. All those spot pricing or that face value of the numbers out there all the way through 4 years, we have to bring back to today's value. In every period, we're assuming that the interest or the inflation rate is constant through the 4 years every period. And if it's 10% annual, then and we have 4 periods, then we have to divide 10 by 4 periods. Remember that for our periodic interest there when we start doing our formula. And what I did at the top there is that's a little bit of a mechanism or construct that you use when you need to do timed payments like this. Above everything, I put these index of 0 to 15. There's 16 quarters there, right? We're going to use that in our formula because if you remember how the formula for present value on some kind of future cash flow works, we have to discount it. In the numerator will be the actual cash flow. In the denominator, it's going to be the an effect of the discount rate for the period raised to the number of the period that we're in. Okay, so it bothers me a little bit that we've only got $12 million out there still. What's going to happen here? What's going to happen? Where we discount it for an inflation rate, the present value of $12 million. I want to give ourselves a little bit more headroom than that. Let's start our formulas here. Okay, so we're going to take the cash flow from the period. And then we divide it by 1 plus the rate. So let's get ourselves some parentheses here. And within the parentheses, it's going to be 1 plus another set of parens here for the simple annual rate divided by 4, the number of periods in the year. We're going to compound it every 3 months. Okay. And we get minus 4.9 or something million. Now, we have to raise it. This is the effect that I really want to explain in this video. This is why I made the video. Is the book chose a convention where we are evaluating the discount rate at the beginning of every term. So that first quarter, that 5 million is as if we paid $5 million on the first day. The second quarter says we paid $5 million on the 91st day. Okay, and so on and so forth as you go down the line there. Okay, and that affects how we calculate the present value. So the reason I laid it out with the indices there from 0 to 15 is we're going to raise the denominator to that period. So anything raised to 0 is 1. So $5 million out minus $5 million divided by 1 is $5 million. Okay. Now what we're going to do is go back in there. We're going to use absolute referencing for the interest rate, so we can drag the formula across the sheet here to fill in the rest of the 15 quarters. So we grab the reference to the discount rate and we use F4. If you hit F4, that immediately gives you the absolute referencing. It converts it from relative to absolute referencing. Okay, so nothing changed in the number and the result, and it shouldn't, but now I can drag it across, and the index for the annual rate doesn't change as I drag it across because we used absolute referencing. So now we can take a look. Look at those numbers. Each of the numbers we just calculated is something less than the number above it. Okay, the simple numbers above it. Now we're looking at what the value in today's dollars for each of those cash flows is if it were 10%, 10% held out across the span of the term that we have this. Okay, so we'll drop down the sum here, and in fact, from $12 million after we spent something on the order of 50, 60, $70 million, we're in the hole $1.5 million there roughly. Okay, so let's do something with the arbitrary cash flows that we have there. So at least put ourselves in the positive. So this is totally arbitrary. Obviously, I'm just picking these numbers, and let's pump in 18 here for the last quarter. Let's say we end on a really good quarter. And you can see we netted out as 17 million, and with 10% inflation rate, all of the work for 4 years was only worth $2 million in today's money. So that's $2 million over what did our expenses were. We're talking something about probably $65 million there. We made $2 million on it. Okay. Plus some reinvestment along the way. Even in the years that show positive, those positive years, our sales were going against other expenditures that were taking place during those periods. Okay. So we had to accommodate the convention the book uses that these payments in or out take place at the beginning of the term, the beginning of the quarter. Okay. And if we go ahead and we use the embedded formula within Excel to calculate the NPV, we have to take that into consideration. The NPV formula in Excel doesn't behave like the PV formula in Excel. PV, you can state the convention. You can put a flag in the PV formula that says you want it calculated at the beginning of the term or the end of the term. Well, NPV, unfortunately, doesn't have that. So what we have to do is we have to accommodate that. And to do that, we're going to add everything but the first term. Okay, so this is putting in what we just did there. The first argument for the NPV formula is our discount rate divided by 4 quarters per year. That's our interest rate. And then we're going to grab from the second quarter through the 16th quarter, we're going to grab all those cash flows. And it comes out to 7 million. Now that's not 2 million that we calculated, right? There's a difference there. Now, if you look above it, that is because we did net present value on everything but the first term. So all we have to do is add in the first term here. We do that by hand. So this is the accommodation you have to make for these types of problems when you're using Excel and you're using the built-in formula. You want to use the formula to cross-check your hand calculations, if you will, or the primitive calculations that we used above, right? So you'll see I'll update the formula for the Excel version of the calculation, the NPV. This way we've shown how to do it. You really want to be able to do it the primitive way so that you can always cross-check that the formula that you're using in Excel actually works. So what I'm going to do is just add in that first term there. And there we get our 2 million. And that's where they match. They're roughly the same. If we just expressed it in the same level of precision, that is the number of digits here,